Good morning, this is Jerry Alt. For today's quick tutorial, I thought I would talk to you a little bit about cropping headshots. So I do a lot of headshots. I did 1,000 or so last year, and I was on pace to do even more before the corona quarantine has interrupted our business. But here's a quick tip in terms of shooting and retouching your headshots that will save you a lot of frustration over the long term. So in this situation, this was a shoot I did for a law firm back before Christmas, and when I talk to the clients, whether they come to my studio or I go on location, one of the first things I ask is, what do you need your headshots for? Now in this situation, I was told that they wanted to replace the photos on their website. So I went and looked at their website and saw that they had vertical photos. So I got a little bit of a preview of what they were looking for just by replacing the existing images, but you don't always know, and it isn't always apparent. Maybe they want a photo for their website, maybe they want it for a brochure, maybe they want a square image ultimately for social media, and maybe they want a black and white instead of a color, or they want to have a combination. So all of those things go into consideration when I ask preliminary questions of my contact at my client's office, especially when I haven't worked with them in the past. So in this situation, I knew we were going to shoot vertical, so I set up for that. The original image I shot had lots of headroom on it because I wasn't sure that they weren't going to want some particular crop they might want to change up. Maybe I'd go on location and they would say, you know, the last guy who shot them made them too big and too much my arms were showing. Or maybe we're thinking about just going to head and shoulders. Now, if I was going to crop this for vertical headshot, I would use an 8x10 aspect. And my tendency is to want to crop these in pretty close to the shoulders, using my rule of thirds to give me a line for their eyes, and that way we've got a pretty good shot when we're done. It's got good head space, meaning that the face is taking up a significant amount of the frame. Now if I'm doing these for actors, you know, or in some cases people who just really want to get their head out there, you know, you might go tighter than this. You've got scenarios, again, you see it more with actors and models, where it's a little more like that. Okay, you've cut into the head a little bit. You're really kind of bringing the person forward in the frame. But this is a law firm. You can tell by the way they're dressed that all of the guys were in suits, all of the women were in dresses. They were looking for something a little more conventional, so that's where I'm going from. So here's the first tip. You're probably going to be able to do a lot of the general things, correcting any color, contrast, and lighting in Lightroom. If you do that, I suggest that you find one of the photos, make those general adjustments to it, then select the rest of them and hit your sync button. Now I've only selected a single image, but if I had multiple images selected, I could go down here and there'd be a sync button showing here. And that way I know that I've got consistent color, that I've, you know, tweaked my white balance where I want it. But what I want to talk about today is the cropping. So if I decide ahead of time that this is the kind of crop I want to use for this client, maybe I'm going to make it just a little bit tighter to exaggerate the difference here. And I do this crop first and then take this image into Photoshop. Here's where the problem comes up. So I've selected Command E to edit this image in Photoshop, and here I've got the image up here. So I'm going to do a few things. I'm not actually going to retouch this, but I'll do a couple of things just to show you. Here I'm using my patch tool with using content-aware fill to take out little things on the face. I find that this works better for little things like zits and razor burn and whatever, instead of trying to smudge or clone into the spot. So I do a couple of things like that. This particular attorney obviously had some money to spend on glasses, doesn't have that nasty glare showing up on him, but he do a couple of things. Okay, we're not going to go through all the editing. I'm going to talk about editing on a headshot class that I'm going to do, probably going to end up being online under the circumstances in early April, and I'll let people know when that's going to happen. But so let's assume that I've done everything I need to do on this, and now I'm going to save it back to Photoshop. From Photoshop back into Lightroom. I didn't do much, so it didn't take very much time. So here we go. Here's the image popping up in a second. There we go. Well, here's the problem. Remember before when I showed you the original image, I had all that space on it, right? If I go into this one, I've got all kinds of room to adjust. But now, because I made those adjustments beforehand and went into Photoshop, the image that came back, in my case, I saved them as TIFF files so that I can go back in and still have layers. But if this client changes their mind and says, oh, you know what, we decided that we want to go horizontal. Now look what happens. I've cut off the head. I can't do that. Well, how can I save the head? Well, then I got to come in like this, and then I got to, and it's not going to work. You have the same problem, potentially. I cheated and had a little bit more space in here. But what if they say, hey, we want to have a social media version for everybody, and we want that? Or God forbid, they come back and say, hey, you know what, we changed our mind. Can you make these headshots longer? Can we show like a half-height shot? Well, no, you can't, because you've already cropped off most of that body. Or we want room all the way around them. You can't do that. So my tip for today is take the image without a crop. Oops. Go to your original. Maybe you want to cut it off a little bit here. That's fine. You don't have to be ridiculous. But there. Now I've got all of the person. I've got pretty much all of the frame. Now if I take that into Photoshop, I make my changes. All you're going to do is, bring it up closer so you can see you're going to do the same changes. Now when you save it back into Lightroom, you have an image you can still work with. So if this client says, oh, I want to do a wider shot, voila, you've got a wider shot. If they want to do a square for social media, now you've got something you can play with. And if they decide, which I don't recommend to clients, that you want to do something long, showing all of the body, you've got room to do that. So don't mess with your final product, and don't create work you don't have to create. Think of the number of times if you did 20 of these or 30 of these and you had cropped them all ahead of time. Now the client changes their mind. You basically go back and start over. My average time retouching from start to finish on a headshot file is somewhere between 5 and 10 minutes. In some cases, if they're not looking for real clean images, maybe they're for ID badges, I might be as low as 1 or 2 minutes tops per image. Well, you do 50 of those, that's 50 minutes. Do you want to go back and do it again? No. So 2 things to take away from here. Number 1, talk to your clients ahead of time, whether they come to your studio, whether you're shooting them outdoors, or whether you're going on location. Find out what they intend to use their photos for so that you can predetermine whether you're going to shoot them wide to begin with, where you're going to shoot them with more breathing room around them in either a vertical or horizontal format. And then the other thing is make all the changes before you do that crop. All right, that's it for today. Have a good day.